The second weak verb in this lesson are the first Aleph verbs. That is, verbs that have an Aleph in the first position of the root. For example, the verb amar, having to do with to say. And it turns out that many of these verbs, or at least the amar in particular, well, theoretically you should have had a hirik under the first consonant and then a shaba under the aleph. But instead of getting yimar, for whatever reason, it goes to a o vowel and you get yomar. So he will say is yomar, she will say is tomar, you masculine singular will say is likewise tomar. And so it's an A class in this case with an A theme vowel. And then it has an O vowel as the vowel that's associated with the between the preformative and the aleph, and that works all the way through. The only really interesting place is with I will say Omar. Instead of writing the aleph twice, you get a preformative aleph for the first common singular imperfect, and you have aleph of the root. Rather than writing aleph twice, you just write it once, and you just have Omar. Otherwise, that's the only irregularity in this particular form. Now, the theme vowel in first alephs will vary a little bit depending on the precise form. So the normal imperfect will be yomar, he will say. But sometimes in pause, or I should say in pause, it'll go from an A vowel to an E vowel, and you'll get yomer instead of yomar. And then in the vav consecutive forms, you get two things. The accent moves back, and the vowel goes to an E vowel, and so you get a vayomer. So he will say is yomar, but and he said with a vav consecutive is vayomar, which is building off of this pausal form, except with the accent receded, the long E has to go to a short E, since an unaccented closed syllable requires a short vowel. But if that form is itself in pause, then you get a vayomar with the A vowel coming back in the pausal form. And if you want to say and I said with a vav consecutive, it would be a vayomar, where you get a patah here because you can't double the aleph with the vav consecutive, so that lengthens, and the omar is the form that you would have expected otherwise. So anyway, that's some first aleph forms, and a call to eat, and avad, to get lost, behave. Similarly, the theme vowel being patah, but there are some variations in exactly how they get pointed. When you move to the imperative, again, this too will be modified in the first aleph verbs. So if you want to tell someone to say something, tell a guy at least to say something, well, the form should be shava under the first consonant and a holum between the second and third consonant of the root. But again, when you try to put a shava under the aleph, it complains. It says, I need some support. And aleph prefers E vowels, so you get a hataf segol. The feminine singular is same as the strong verb because it has a full vowel under the first consonant of the root in the paradigm. But when you have the feminine plural, the same thing. You try to put a shava under the aleph. It doesn't like it. It ends up being a hataf sagol. Again, aleph's kind of like e-vowels more than a-vowels. And you get the e-vowel there, the e-half vowel, the hataf sagol. The cal infinitive construct also has the hataf sagol, ekol, eat as a command. And again, if you were to add preposition la to it, la would start off with a shava, but then by rule of shava, the shava under the lamed and the hataf sagol under the aleph would interact so that the vowel under the lamed by rule of shava would become the vowel of the half vowel, and you'd get le'ekol, to eat. Now it turns out that with Amar, it ought to follow that pattern, but because Amar is such a common word to say, you would start off with a pattern like this, with a sagol and a hataf sagol, but then the aleph quiesces. So instead of getting le'emor, the short E and the short E of the hataf sagol and the short E of the sagol add together to form a long E, and you get lemor instead of le'emor. You can understand how that might happen. When pronominal suffixes are added to the infinitive of first aleph verbs, they will either follow the pattern like oklo, where the vowel between the kaf and the lamed move back, or you could get a pattern with a hataf patah under the aleph, as in akol kem. That would be a kamat satuf, akol kem, and so that's how that would work. So that's the grammar of lesson 32. We'll see if there's anything to mention on the vocabulary. He begins with amad, which he gives the cal definition as to perish, though it can also mean to wander or go astray, perishing being kind of a derived meaning from that kind of idea. The imperfect form will be like amar, having the yovad being the imperfect form. In pause it becomes yoved, and then the imperative is avod with hataf patah under the aleph. Then he gives you another first aleph verb, amad or amade, you get both spellings, meaning to love. The imperfect form has the sagol pattern, yehav, he will love, imperative form with the hataf sagol. He also gives you the infinitive construct. Note that there's an alternative infinitive construct form that has a kamatz hey ending. There's a few verbs that will do that. I don't think he's mentioned that up until this point. And then you have asaf, to gather or to remove. And again, it gives you the imperfect form with the sagol, and also gives you a form with a suffix where you may, instead of getting a hataf sagol type pattern, you may end up with a patah pattern. And then you have asar, to tie or to bind or to imprison, and it gives you imperfect forms and forms of suffixes and an imperative form. Hazak is a stative verb which means to be strong or firm or the like, and again he gives you the imperfect and the imperative forms of that. Hezekiah is related to that. He's Kiyahu. The Yahu is Yahweh, and you can see chazak, to be strong, as being a part of that, and it looks like the Lord has strengthened is the meaning of Hezekiah. Then you have chasak, to hold back or withhold or restrain. And in this case, even though you have a first guttural, you will get the shavah there, though it's as if it started off with a hataf patah that influenced the theme vowel, the vowel in front of the under the preformative to be an a vowel. So you get yah sok as your imperfect form. You would have expected something more like yah sok with a hataf patah, but that's not what you get. Though you do get the hataf patah in the imperative form. Gutturals will occasionally accept silent shavahs, and as you can see, first gutturals are not 100% consistent in all cases. And then you have chashav, which means to think or to account. And again, this one ends up with a shavah under the first consonant when you make it imperfect. Or if you put a makef after it, making one accent on the two items, you will go all the way down to the hataf patah. So you get yacha, shov, whatever what follows, if you move the accent down stream. And then the imperative form does have the hataf patah. Amad, to stand or to take one stand, has that hataf patah in the imperfect and in the imperative. And then patah means to open. The name of the vowel patah is named after this. The patah is when you make a vowel with an open mouth. But anyway, patah means to open, as in to open a door. And he gives you imperative and imperfect forms of that. And then saneh means to hate. And I always thought of that when someone tried to saw my knee off. You saneh, that's a very hateful act. But anyway, kal, to hate, is saneh. The imperfect is yisna, and the imperative would be sin u in the plural. The idea of hate often includes rejection, as opposed to the idea of choosing, included in the meaning to love. So when God says, or when it says of Jacob that Rachel he loved but Leah he hated, that means he preferred Rachel over Leah. So you get sometimes a reduced meaning of hate. Et means time, one of the words for time. Notice a geminate, so when you make it plural, you get etim with an I vowel and a doubling, or etot, sometimes spelled feminine. It is feminine, but sometimes it has gender confusion and shows up as a masculine look. And then with a suffix, you end up with eto. And one last form is ken or ken, kain or ken. Kain if it's by itself, ken if it's got a makef attaching to it. But anyway, that means thus or so. So that's a little bit about the vocabulary. The exercises, you get to practice on some of these forms by translating from English into Hebrew. And then, as usual, you have some translation of Hebrew sentences into English and are asked to parse each of the forms. None of these, as it turns out, are from any biblical text per se. But as we go along, we'll get more and more biblical texts as we're getting more and more of the grammar. Well, that's enough for this lesson. Hit road. We'll see you later.